This video is about the DC timer board and how to properly set up your factory recommended settings. First, this control panel may not look exactly like the one that you have. It's going to look fairly similar. I'll just go over a few of the main items on this panel, and then we'll take the time to talk about the DCT timer. First, this is the push and pull to start. Dust collector, almost everyone will have that. Emergency stop for obvious reasons. This continuous and on-demand selector switch allows you to change your dust collector from cleaning continuously based on a time, or on-demand. The on-demand uses the Dwyer in order to clean only when it needs to based on your filters getting dirty. This one runs on a VFD, so you'll see a manual control on the speed and an auto control on the speed. And then this one over here just allows you to ramp up or turn down your fan based on how much air that you need for your application. So that's this in general. We're going to go ahead and zoom in, and we're going to look directly at the Dwyer control board and how to set up the settings on it. So the first thing we're going to do is go through the processes on this dust collector, the different menu items. The first one, as you'll see that by standard is already lit up, is this one that says process, inches of water column. And this is basically showing you the resistance across the filters, which is the point of the Dwyer control board. The Dwyer control board tells your dust collector when it needs to clean the filters based on how dirty they are. So these settings are all to be set up for proper cleaning of your dust collector filters. So oftentimes in your brand new filters, you'll see this low, might be 0.2, 0.4, 1.0. Those are all low differential pressure readings. Now, as this builds up over time, when your filters get older, you might start seeing 4 and 4.5 and 5. And once this Dwyer board continually shows 5 or above, it's probably a time when you need to replace your filters. So this is that reading. All right, in order to go down through the different options, you hit select. The first one is last output. And you'll see it blinked 22 when I first changed it. That means this particular board is capable to have 22 channels, but it stays on 6 because the dust collector that this one is installed on has 6 channels, has 6 pulse solenoid valves and 6 diaphragm valves. So you know how many you need to pulse. And you'll see down here as well, there's 6 wires that are connected to the 6 channels here. Basically what that last output tells you is when your dust collector goes through a cleaning cycle, it'll pulse valves 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then it'll go back to 1. If this shows like 10 and you only have 6 valves, when it completes that first group of 6, then it'll be a long break in between cleaning, so that you might not get as good a cleaning as you want on your dust collector because it takes longer to go through the valves that aren't actually there. The next setting is time off. Basically, that's a setting in seconds and how long between pulses your dust collector is set for. And we use 10. Time on, this is milliseconds. This is how long the actual pulse is happening on the dust collector, which means the valve is open for 150 milliseconds, releasing the proper amount of compressed air down through your filters in order to clean them. So we use 150 milliseconds. High limit. So when your inches of water column shows above 3, when your dust collector is set on demand cleaning, when it's above 3, the dust collector will start its pulse cleaning cycle. And low limit, once your dust collector has been cleaned and your differential pressure gauge shows below 2, it will stop pulsing until your dust collector goes back above 3 again. So this is the low limit, and it stops that pulse cycle so that your filters don't need to be cleaned whenever they're not that dirty. High alarm is set to 6. This basically will have a flashing light that blinks when whenever your high alarm level gets above 6. And low alarm is set to 0 because when your system is shut down, it automatically goes to 0, and that way your alarm won't go off. The high alarm and low alarm are really not something that we use that often on dust collectors, although there are some circumstances that may require you to have a high alarm or low alarm set, especially if you're monitoring it remotely on a PLC, or maybe your air permit requires you to have a minimal amount of differential pressure buildup on your filters. This is cycle delay. Basically what that means, at the end of the cycle of all 6, for example on this one, all 6 filters being pulse cleaned, at the end of that 6th one, 0 means there's no delay in between the last pulse and then it goes back to the first pulse. And that is measured in minutes. Downtime cycles. This one is set to 5 downtime cycles, which means it'll go through and pulse all 6 filters 5 times at the end when you turn off your dust collector. That's for downtime cleaning. Downtime cleaning is the most important cleaning cycle because the dust collector is pulse cleaning while you're no longer bringing additional dust into the machine, and your fan may be reduced down to a very slow speed or off. So it gives you the best clean that you're going to get on your filters. And then the auto alarm reset is in seconds, and it's basically a delay to turn off the alarm. For example, if you get above that 6 on the high limit, it'll reset if it goes down below 6 for a certain period of time. And this is currently set to 5 seconds. So back to process, and again, you can cycle down through them, and when you need to change any one of them, you'll see there's an up and down indicator on here, and this allows you to move them up and down in order to dial it back into factory recommendation. All right, I just want to go over a couple of common issues that people run into, some troubleshooting tips. The first one that we hear from time to time is, why is there a long gap in between the pulsing? Well, first it might be your dust collector just doesn't need to pulse because the differential pressure is showing below the high limit setting. But sometimes you'll see that this is reading 0.0, and there could be a variety of different things that are causing that. The first one is most commonly your tubing that comes and is installed into your machine and back to the Dwyer board. Oftentimes it's reversed, either on the dust collector or reversed in the control panel. And basically what happens is your high limit and your low limit tubing is not reading in the proper order. Another issue is you might have a kink in your hose. You might have an ember. Oftentimes we'll see in areas like in a steel mill or a grinding or welding shop, if somebody was working closely to the dust collector and a spark hit the tubing, then it could cause a pinhole, which can cause your to not get a reading. One of the other things that it could be causing a long gap between pulsing is if you don't have the right last output set, and you might have way too many outputs set than what your dust collector has, or your cycle delay is set too long. So if you go through and you reset all of your controls to the factory recommendation, you shouldn't notice a long gap between pulsing anymore. Sometimes if your solenoid isn't pulsing, that's another issue. You may have one solenoid that isn't pulsing properly. Could be a variety of different things. You could have got some dust or some debris or dirt into the solenoid, where it either is jammed open and you hear a lot of compressed air leaking out, or it's not working properly and it needs to be replaced for any of a variety of reasons. But it could be an electrical problem. One of these wires could be loose. It could be loose going up to your dust collector. Those are a few of the things that you can check to make sure that that solenoid pulses properly. Another common question that we get is what if my filters are not cleaning properly? The first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you have 80 to 90 psi. You always want to have an air regulator on your header tank that shows 80 to 90 psi, and double check that on the actual header tank itself to make sure that what matches on your compressed air regulator, make sure that matches what's on your header tank. You should have 80 to 90 psi of dry, clean air. If your filters you believe are not lasting as long as they should, dry air, you could have moist air, could be causing the filters to be wet and not pulse properly. You could have not enough compressed air pulsing your filters. Or if they're cleaning fine but not lasting as long as you would like, it's possible that you're over pulsing those filters with too much PSI. So you just want to make sure that all of those things match your factory recommendations.